Okay, let's talk about our Module 1 in demolition estimating. In Module 1, we're going to cover scope, methods, and safety foundations. Okay, so demolition estimating really starts long before, right? You knock down the first wall. And in this module, I'm going to teach you how to define your scope, choose the right method, and integrate safety, compliance, and logistics, which is very important, and how we put that, all of those items, into your estimate. Okay, so from permits, who takes care of that, to disposal, who takes care of that. And it really depends on the size of the project. If you're doing a big commercial project, chances are you are not handling any of those issues. But if you are, then you need to know how to properly, professionally do those things. Now, this class is either for the self performer, which I help all the time, get everything in order so they can be efficient, professional, and start off really doing a good job. Letting the GC know, I know what I'm doing here, and I'm going to show you I know what I'm doing. Okay, so in this module, I'm going to ensure that uh, you definitely, like I do in all my estimating classes, that you have defensible numbers, okay, that project both your cost, right, and safety. That is very important as a demolition professional, and to incorporate those safety issues. I would say in every aspect, but certainly for demolition, because you're knocking stuff down, you have to make sure you know within the limits and what stays, what goes, okay? And so in this class, we're going to learn 5 things. We're going to go over the difference between selective and total demolition and the uh, procedure for each and how to apply the methods for each. And okay, that's very important. So we're going to talk about selective and total. It's not just knocking down everything. There are procedures depending on what you're going to demo. Two, I'm going to help you build a complete scope sheet with limits, protections, your sequencing, and anything that you need for temporary, uh, for on a temporary basis for the job. Okay, so three, we're going to identify your hazmat risk. As a demolition professional, you should know what's the year the building was built. Then if you know the year the building was built, you'll know if you may come across asbestos, or any lead, uh, uh, what is it? I always get them backwards. PCBs, okay? Any of those things, silica, all right? And you'll be able to integrate abatement and compliance. And those costs should be part of your demolition. So it's not just my labor to knock down this stuff, and it's not just the dumpster cost and the recycle fees, and it's the safety, it's logistics, it's all of that you incorporate uh, overhead and profit into your final cost, okay? And so I also have you or help you plan your demo logistics. What comes first? What comes second? Okay, what do we do when we have to disconnect utilities? Okay, salvage and recycling. Well, how do you handle that? Do you just throw it self-performer in your backyard and it ends up somehow getting thrown away? Do you know that you can make money from that stuff? Okay, and do you incorporate those salvage value cost, salvage value? That's what we're going to talk about a lot. Salvage value. Do you deduct that from your final price, giving the owner a little break? Do you do that to make you more competitive when you know certainly that you can go and get money for the stuff you recycle, or do you just charge whatever and greed takes over and you don't give them a break? And that's what I would never recommend. Okay, you always want to give a break. When I was a claims adjuster doing auto accidents, okay, when a car is out, it has a salvage value. Some people wanted to keep the car, and so what did we do? We didn't repair the car. They got to keep it, but they also got from the insurance company what the salvage value was for the car. it's not insurable anymore. All of that stuff would apply. But yeah, there is a value for salvage, and you should incorporate that, meaning discount your estimate based on that if you want to be competitive. I mean, do it once or twice, do it every fourth project, do it when it's worth it. I mean, really, you do it when it's worth it. If you're an electrician and you have to demo all of these lights that you get to keep, you need to have a plan to both sell those, resell them, because typically by demolition law, the unless it's expressly stated in the contract, the demo professional now becomes the owner of whatever he demos, unless it's stated in another way. And that's why you need to look at your specifications. You need to look at your contract to make sure, demolition professional, because yeah, if you're going to demo 300, strip lights, that's a come up. You can resell that, but again, what's the salvage value of that? Deduct it from your demo. Okay. Did we go over logistics? 4. That's number 4. We're gonna physically do some things to plan your demo logistics. Okay. And we did that. Utility disconnect, salvage value, trucking, and disposal. All of those things need to be line itemed in your estimate. And last but not least, we're going to apply OSHA 1926 Subpart T and permitting, okay, requirements. And how do you incorporate that directly into your estimate? Okay, so this is just module 1 of our demolition estimating class. These are the things that we're going to discuss. There are videos, quizzes on each of the items, exercises on each of these 5 items I talked about with respect to each project that we do. Okay, so we have a CVS right now that we're working on that has demo. We're going to incorporate each one of these 5 concepts, and that's your first project is a CVS. It's a small renovation. We're going to incorporate these 5 concepts into that one, and we want to work together and get really detailed about it. Okay, so that's module number 1, and the key takeaway, really, what I want you to get from our exercises in module 1 is 1. I always want you to define what stays and what goes, okay? And we want to do that before we touch anything. So you should define what stays and what goes, okay? We want to make sure you understand selective is not total demo, okay? So choose the right approach for cost and safety, okay? Hazmat compliance, asbestos, lead, okay? Those are cost drivers that cannot be ignored, okay? And so there's a cost that you need to be incorporated in that if you know those things apply. And how do we find out? Okay, well, we find out because, first of all, we do some research on the year the build. That's really what you need. The year and where the building was built, and you can get any hazardous materials that may be contained within whatever portion of the building construction. You can do that easily, okay? And make sure it's clear on your estimate. That's going to be a line item on your estimate. Somebody has to incur the cost. You have to keep your employees safe. And asbestos, there is a huge procedure if you know for a fact there's a large amount of asbestos. Definitely, if it's a commercial project, GC, they should already know. But if you find out, that's first thing you do is contact them and say, hey, look, we got a problem. Okay, let's see. Logistics. We're going to go over the timeline from disconnect to disposal. Okay, and that helps us shape the true demo cost. Okay, what are the logistics from disconnect to disposal? Got to know what comes first, second, third, and last. Okay, and then OSHA. Okay, so all of these things will be key takeaways for you in this module, because really OSHA is non-negotiable when it comes to them checking on you. I mean, everyone doesn't have to have a card, I have an OSHA card, whatever. But you do need to have OSHA training. And I've chosen not to renew my trainer's license because honestly, it's just not, for me, it wasn't worth it. And to sit with a bunch of bros that you got to hear about how much they know all day and all night for 5 days straight, it was just not worth it. And really, I can teach OSHA without having that. But to get a card, yeah, you got to have a certified OSHA trainer, but I'm choosing not to renew mine. This would have been my third renewal, and yeah, I'm good with it. So let's talk about just some concepts I want you to be able to have the answers for, and for this module. So what is the key difference between selective and total demolition? I want you to, those are some things I want you to be able to think through, okay? And really, basically, selective removes only specific, the sink, the flooring, where total removes the entire structure, and there's a whole different approach for each. Okay, why is it important to build a detailed demolition scope sheet? Well, yeah, like anything you're going to do, it helps you define your limits, okay, the protections you need for what you're doing, sequencing, what comes first, second, and anything you need for temporary control, okay. Hazmat, okay, which of the following have I talked about a lot is the common hazard, okay, that impacts demo the most? And yes, it is asbestos. So it is key that you have a way, and I will give you check sheets, checklist, all of that, how we go about where you may find the asbestos in an older building. What years are we concerned about with lead and asbestos and whatever? But yes, for demolition, know that it's vital that you do your research on what you're demoing, and the asbestos removal will be your largest cost driver because there are a lot of things involved in removing asbestos by government standards, by law, by OSHA, by all of that, and that is a big cost driver, all right? Logistics. We're going to talk about which of the following should be considered in demo logistics, okay? So the logistics for demo is really your utility disconnects, recycling, trucking, how you getting the stuff where it needs to go, and then how are you disposing of it. Okay, so those are the things as far as your logistics, demolition estimator. Yes, am I disconnecting any utilities? My recycling, what am I, how am I incorporating that? Am I incorporating salvage value? Am I giving some of that back? Recycling. Trucking, how am I getting it there? Do I have to get it there, or is there a dumpster there in the GC? I can just leave it. Okay, so those are the things. And compliance, last but not least. We're going to talk about, in general, for construction in OSHA, the construction standards for OSHA, because OSHA has standards for the general industry, okay, for military, and for construction, okay? And the construction standard, you should know, is 1920, whether you take OSHA or not, is OSHA 1926 Subpart T. Okay, Subpart T, and I'll have a video on that with quizzes. That is the OSHA standard for demolition, safety, and those are the requirements. So it's vital that you know that, all right? So this is module 1. Those are the things that we're going to go over. Again, let's talk about the difference between selective and total demolition and how we apply the appropriate methods. We're going to build a complete scope sheet based on each of the estimates that we work on that include these things: the protections, okay, the limits, sequencing, and any temporary things we may need, temporary works. We're going to identify any potential or have a procedure for identifying any hazmat risk. And for a demolition, the biggest cost driver is asbestos, is also lead and silica dust. Okay, but the abatement cost for asbestos is high. We'll talk about that. What years building, during this year the buildings were built and where was the asbestos, okay? And we'll cover, lead too, but asbestos for demo, that's the biggest cost driver. So we'll talk about that. We'll plan your demo logistics, okay? Utility disconnects, salvage and recycling, trucking, and disposal. All of those logistics have a cost associated. And then last but not least, we'll go over OSHA 1926, Subpart T, your permitting requirements, and how we directly input that into the estimate. So review this video, be ready to start each of the 5 parts, and be ready to take the quiz.